Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. Now that the update is dropped, and it's been a big update, I kind of wanted to take some time and go through those changes now that they're implemented. So today I want to talk about some of the more notable bug fixes that we saw, a little bit about the star stat changes and how those have gone into effect and how those have been implemented. And then we're going to talk about G9, G10 being added to the game. And then we'll end with a more detailed analysis of raid rewards, specifically focusing on personal rewards, but we have some information about the guild chest rewards as well. And I'm going to try and put timestamps down in the bottom below so that you can skip to the part you want to see. I think this might be a long video, but I'm going to try and keep it tight and concise. Just one more thing about the guild rewards. I've actually really come around on them since my last video. Now that I've kind of deep dived into the numbers, I'm a lot happier with where they're at and things make a lot more sense to me. So we're going to get into that. So first, let me just sort of rattle off some bug changes that I think are good that they fixed. The first is I think they added, I don't think they mentioned it, but they, it's not here. Of course it's not here. But you can now buy Eladin in the main supply store for gems, which means I expect Arwen will become farmable within the next few weeks. Some other big changes are they've just increased the optimization, the game optimization, as well as added some graphics updates, definitely some UI stuff. Things just look a little bit better and they run a lot better both on my iPhone and on BlueStacks, which isn't technically supported. Default sorting was supposed to be fixed. It's still broken and they have another fix for it coming in the next patch, whenever that is going to be. And one thing I'm actually a big fan of that's a huge quality of life update for me that I really enjoy is that if you have the shards to promote, you don't have to. There's still a find button beneath that now. Used to just only have the promote, and then you had to basically know where the where it was in the campaign or just go hunting for it. Instead, you've got the find button here. That's a great quality of life update. The calendar, there's still calendar bugs. Apparently some of them got fixed, so the really bad ones are fixed, but there's still some calendar issues. And lastly, it seems like the 106 error bug. This is not something I personally experienced, but it seems that that's gotten fixed, and I had some guildies who were affected by that said it was incredibly annoying and that they're happy that that has been fixed. Okay, I quickly want to talk about the mercenary rules that they laid out in the update as well that are coming with the raid, this last patch, right? It says, with the arrival of raids, we've included some rules when it comes to individual participation and guilds. Players cannot gather raid keys for your guild during the first 24 hours you join a guild. Players cannot participate in a raid that begins within the first 24 hours of joining a guild. And players cannot participate in a raid for 6 days after your last participation in a raid if you leave your guild. So these are to prevent mercenary-like behavior, and I think this will actually do a pretty good job. I'm sure there are people figuring out currently how to get around these, but this seems like it covers a lot of bases. And the reason that they're implementing this is because this was specifically a big issue in Swigo. And what it meant was that you kind of had to know somebody who could come in and help you essentially solo. They would essentially solo the raid so that everybody could get the character shards. But what it meant was that the people that were going around and doing the mercenary stuff were just racking up rewards at like an insane pace. And so they want to kind of prevent that sort of behavior. And then making sure, you know, that yes, as a guild, you're collectively working towards some goal, and it feels, I think, less rewarding overall, probably, to have somebody come in and help you get those rewards just to stay competitive, if that makes sense. So I actually like the mercenary rules quite a bit. I think this also prevents a lot of people from this prevents a need from having massive clusters where you can just shuffle people in and out to kind of maximize all this sort of stuff, which I guess I'm a fan of, but if you're part of a cluster, you're probably not a fan of it. Done a little bit of testing with, you know, seeing where things land after the star stat change. My 5-star Elrond team, well, 5-star plus some, Elrond team can beat a 6-star Isengard team. I think it would really struggle against a 7-star Isengard team, a full 7-star. I'll find that out in a little bit. In terms of the sort of PvE changes, I was closer to finishing that last stage of this one, Forged in the Deep. I haven't finished this. and the recommended power is 32k, and I have like what 20 something k on that team, I think. And so I was closer to finishing it before the patch, and it's definitely much harder after the patch. It seems like stars are actually a lot more vital, and that this is kind of gets into this. The recommended power that they have here, you need closer to that to complete these than you did previously, is kind of the conclusion I've come to, I would say. Next thing I want to mention is that they've added these new materials to the supply store. These are purple materials. They're the opal, turquoise. They're basically all the gemstones. And these are gear tier 9 components. So if we go back to the game and you look at the supply store here, it's these. So topaz, opal. You can currently only find these in the main supply store for gold. So I have been purchasing them because I'm interested in eventually getting some of my characters up to gear 9, but this is the only place you can find these particular pieces. And then the other piece you need is the essences, which you can only get down here. These essences, which you can only get with these mithril raid tokens. So this is going to transition into me talking about gear 9 and gear 10, and it seems really hard to get characters up to gear 9 and almost impossible to get them to gear 10 at the moment. So this is basically gear goals that are very much down the line, even for top end people, right? They're not going to be able to get all of their squads to gear 9 and gear 10 because they're limited pretty heavily in getting both essences and some of these other pieces. They can't just farm them endlessly. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the stats that G9 and G10 bring, though. Switching back again. Okay. Yes, more math, more stats. All right, so I added gear 9, gear 10, gear 9 plus, gear 8 plus as well into this. This is a graph showing the health of Elrond just from gear. So no levels, no stars, just from gear, and how that scales with kind of as you increase in gear. And you can see it's like it's parabola-like, it's a quadratic. And what that means is that you're kind of flattening out here. You're not getting as much of an increase. You're not like doubling your power every time you go up in a gear tier. Does that make sense? The other thing that's important to realize that I don't have plotted on this graph is that the resources required to kind of go up in this gear tier, right, becomes significantly more. So there's more resources for less payoff. And that's kind of reflected in these numbers here. So these columns here represent how much of an increase in stats this new gear tier has over the previous gear tier. And if we look at it, it's just continuously going down, right? So gear tier 2, you get 2.5 times the amount of stats that you had from just equipping stuff in gear 1. But like this drastically decreases. And I would say, gear 6 to gear 8, it's down in this 1.4 to 1.3 range. And that's when the resources really start to pile up, right? And then now at G9 and G10, it's down in this 1.2 range. So you're only multiplying your stats by like 1.2 every time you go up a gear tier. It's not that significant in that way. Here's another way to look at it. All right. So this graph, let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, this graph basically shows how much does the stats from having 7 stars contribute to your overall stats. Not levels and stars, just from the stars itself. And you can do this as a function of gear tier, right? So at gear 1, obviously it's massive because you don't have any gear. But as you get down into G8 to G10, we've talked about this a little bit before in some previous videos. So at G8, it's about 62% of your stats come from having 7 stars. And at G9, it's about 60%. And then at G10, it goes down to about 57% of your stats come from having 7 stars. So I think people then ask, well, why is it even worth getting gear? Is it even, why is it like this? And I think the reason is because we currently have just 7 stars in the game. That's sort of the max. That's the max it is in Swigo. I know MSF might be doing something wacky, but currently it's 7 stars. So you max out your character on 7 stars, and then your levels in your gear tier are something they can continue to increase over the course of the game, and then they will play more of a role in the stats. But the biggest stat contributor by far, especially after the update, is stars. And this will sort of start to even out over time, but it's not something to super worry about. And I'm saying all this because if you're worried about getting left behind because they've just added G9 and G10 and you're like, I haven't even fully G8'd a squad yet, or like my roster's just not even there, take a breath, because I don't think this is something that's going to be achievable. Like, all the Krakens are not going to suddenly have G9 rosters. And even if they do, the stat contribution at this moment is not as significant as making sure you get shards for your characters to get them to 7 stars. Okay, so the gemstone pieces you can only buy with gold here in the gold store, and you can only get the essences with the mithril raid coins. So this transitions us into talking about what can we expect in terms of raid coins and rewards from the raid. It's currently a bug. You are supposed to be able to click on the guild reward chests, so you should be able to click on these and have them show the rewards, but that's currently a bug. They're working on getting a fix out for that. In the meantime, CG Heem typed up all of the rewards of the boxes for all of these, and so we're going to take a look at that now. I've replicated it here. I'm switching back and forth like a madman today. Okay, so this is what this top sort of, let me increase the size here. Hopefully that's a little bit better. This is what this top kind of section of numbers is. I've got all the boxes here, the amount of required points, and then the gold you get, the character XP, raid coins, and then, all the stuff, right? There's a couple of key things I want to point out here. One, that first box is at 1 million points, which basically means even smaller communities, smaller guilds, it's going to be worth it to start the raid, because you're going to be able to probably pretty easily clear 1 million points, and then you immediately get 300k gold, 50 gold raid coins, and some other stuff as well, right? The second box is at 72 million points. What that means is if you have 36 members in your guild, they need an average of 2 million on each to contribute on their personal track to get to box number 2. In which case, you get 300k gold again, right? So the gold actually does not increase as you increase in the box here, and I think that's a really smart decision, because if you continue to have massively escalating rewards, especially for something like gold, then it sort of defeats the purpose of the structure of the raid. I talked a little bit about this in my last video, but I just kind of want to expound on that, which is essentially just the whole purpose of the format of this raid, right, is that you start the raid and then people select their own difficulty level, and that gives you latitude for a number of reasons. One, you don't have to make sure that all of your players are about the same collection power and basically are, all centered around one particular area and can hit a certain amount on the raids, because they can select their own difficulty level. But two, it also means that, yes, you can then have a series of squads that then can span difficulty levels, and you can work on squads and getting them up to the next difficulty level in a cool way. You could test out squads at a lower difficulty level without dumping a lot more resources into them before taking them to a higher difficulty level. I think that makes sense. But going back to the kind of first point, which is just what this means is you can have a community of your friends, and they don't all have to be the same level, which is really good, and that actively promotes community. And that's probably one of the biggest, most important parts of these types of games, is having something community oriented in terms of content and function. But back to the sort of stuff at hand, which is, what do these rewards look like? Well, the second box, 2 million per member if you have 36 members. That's the average you need. It's also when you first start to get the first Gandalf the Grey shards, and that's 5. I think the very, very top end guilds are going to be pushing box 2, possibly pushing box 3. I'm not entirely sure. It's really going to come down to the specifics there, but box 3, people need to be pushing 4 million on average per their personal reward. And this is just with 1 chapter release. Obviously, with 2 chapters released, then people would just have to do 1 million per chapter to get to this first box, 2 million per chapter to get to this second box, right? Note that there is only a 72 million increase from 144 from box 3 to box 4. It doesn't double again. So that's interesting. But what I like about this is that the top end Kraken guilds with chapter 1 released are probably going to be box 2 shooting for box 3. There is no difference in Gandalf shards. So whether you get box 2 or box 3, you're still getting 5 Gandalf shards. This is something I also really like, because it means that the Kraken guilds can't open up a massive gap in terms of resources and in terms of being able to have Gandalf. So I think that's actually a really nice feature of the reward structure and like how they've planned it out. It does not promote behavior where you want to put everybody who's really, really good into one guild. Yes, if you're competitive and that's like what you want out of the game, then of course, but you're not going to be rewarded by drastically more rewards by doing that at the moment, which I'm a fan of because it sort of defeats the purpose of this type of raid that they're trying to put out, right? So with this last box here, you basically need to have 5 teams doing the maximum number of points at the max difficulty and everybody doing that, which seems actually pretty unobtainable, but you're getting essentially 40 Gandalf shards when you get up into this box 6 to 8 territory. And so getting, 40 Gandalf shards a week is pretty good. And you're also going to start getting these Mithril Raid coins. Only in box 7 do you start to get 50 Mithril Raid coins, and then 150 in this last box, which again seems pretty hard to get. Maybe they'll add further difficulties that make this last box more achievable. So you get about 50 Mithril Raid coins there, and about 150 Mithril Raid coins for the last box. And then for the Gold Raid coins, you're starting to get 150 and 300 when you get past that first 2 boxes there. So we'll keep that in mind. Another thing we're going to keep in mind is, like I said, 2 million to get to this box 2. I think that's a good goal for everybody to be kind of working towards so that their guild can get this first, the second box. I keep not counting the first box. So people can keep getting the second box, right? And then that's when you start to get to Gandalf shards. I think this is a good goal for a lot of guilds to have, is this box 2. So 2 million per your personal reward track for just this first chapter, right? Once this first chapter is released. Here, I've basically did a lot of data entry and cataloged the cumulative rewards at each point value here. So what that means is that, okay, I'm at 100,000. So now I've got 100,000 personal points. That's 15K gold and 5K character XP. Let's go down to 2 million here. 2 million, you get 181K, 48.5K character XP, 110 gold, Mithril Raid coins. Let me move that up. 20 gems, no Gandalf shards. Gandalf shards actually start at 2.175 million. So if you're trying to do that on your personal track, you need to be shooting for that. Here's something interesting. The max amount of Gandalf shards you can get is 6. You start to get 6 Gandalf shards at 2.925 million points. So if you are maybe in a guild that is going to struggle to get to some of those higher end boxes, what you can do is guarantee by working on your own roster that you're getting 2.925 million points per chapter on your personal reward track and maximizing your Gandalf gains there. Because once all 4 chapters are released, if you can get this 2.925 million each time, that's 24 Gandalf shards you're getting personally, then plus whatever your guild is getting on top of that. So that, I think, is going to be a good goal for a lot of people, is floating in between this kind of aiming for this 2 million to 3 million range is going to be really a big sweet spot for the rewards. So, but let's focus on 2 million, 181K, 48K, basically 50K for character XP. This is just for the first chapter, right? So each chapter you get your personal rewards. That means at 4 chapters, I'm going to round this up to 200. I know it's not, but so you're getting 200 times 4, 800K in gold, plus the 300K gold guild box you get, right? So that's already 1.1 million gold. I think even then you get basically 1 million gold from hitting 2 million points in each chapter. So 1 million gold a week from a fully released raid is actually pretty good, I think. And this is only if you're doing like 2 million per chapter. Obviously, the longer we go on, the more rewards we're getting, we're going to be able to boost our rosters up and push past this number quite a bit. But just even thinking about at a base level, that's pretty good. So I think I'm probably going to be able to get about 2 million. That's what I'm going to be shooting for. So it's going to be nice to be getting essentially 500K gold and about 50K XP on a weekly sort of basis. I think that's actually better than what I thought it was going to be initially and what I was expecting. So this is why I've come around on the personal raid rewards. I actually think this is pretty fair. And I like what I'm seeing. Okay, so now I want to talk about how we're going to earn those points, because I think I was not I think. I was definitely confused when I initially was looking through this, and I did not understand. And I have some clarifications that I want to get out first. First, a multi-hit does not stack up more than one stack of the Don't Rush Me on the bomber. Okay, so I got that wrong. I thought that that might be the case. That is not the case. A multi-hit attack is going to only put one stack of Don't Rush Me. What I don't know is about team-up attacks. That could play differently. I'm not entirely sure, but Don't Rush Me is not affected by the multi-hit attacks. The other thing I want to clarify that I got confirmation on is if you wipe out all of the orcs, then they automatically refill. So you don't have to play that game of trying to keep either the War Drummer or the Shadow Seer alive. You can just sort of switch off. So there are 6 characters here, right? And you might be wondering, well, normally there are only 5 characters on a team. But if we go back and look at one of their images here, there are 6 characters obviously here. Okay, so this is how we're going to earn points. You gain 5 points for every percentage of health lost by an enemy orc, and then gain 500 points for every defeated enemy orc. We got clarification that this meant you're basically getting 1,000 points for every time you defeat an orc. There are 6 orcs, so if you defeat all of them, there are 6,000 points available there, right? Whenever 2 or more enemy orcs are defeated in a single turn, gain 2,500 points for every orc defeated this way. If you defeat all the orcs at the same time, 2,500 times 6 is 15,000. Gain 2,500 points for every enemy orc defeated by an enemy bomber. Again, 15,000. So the scenario that I'm envisioning, right? Everybody's health is super low on their team. The bomber drops the bomb on their side, wipes them all out. That's like the max amount of points you're going to be able to get, right? In a single round. So you get 15k here, you get 15k here, and you get 6k here. So that's 36,000 points. So if we go to difficulty 1, we can see that the max points here is 100,000. So basically, you clear 3 waves, and then you've got the max points here. Max points here is 300,000, but you have a raid point multiplier of ×3. So it's still basically 3 waves of orcs getting full cleared in that very specific way will get you max points. One of the questions you could ask yourself is, when do I move up a difficulty level? And obviously, if you're maxing out on here, then yes, you want to move up a difficulty level. But let's say you're at difficulty 1 and you can clear 2 waves and you get about 72,000 points. You want to make sure that you're still getting 72,000 points when you move up to difficulty 2. But then move up to difficulty 2 because it's going to have a higher ceiling. You're not going to be so close to getting the max there. And then any additional points you do get have this ×3 multiplier on them, right? So let's say you can only clear 1, 1.5 to 2, depending on RNG here, difficulty 2, but you could clear close to 3 in difficulty 1, still do difficulty 2 because you have a higher ceiling, you have a higher chance of getting those rewards. But you have to make sure that you can at least get the same amount of points that you would get in difficulty 1. I think that makes sense. What teams and like what recommended power we're going to be able to use to clear these difficulties, like a team powered 5,500, what does that mean in terms of getting points? We're not going to know that, unfortunately, until the raid, we can start doing the raid. But this will be pretty interesting. With the star stat changes, I do feel like the power recommendations that they put are closer to being true. What I mean by that is, like, think about the challenges, right? It seems like you could always do the challenges like several thousand underneath the recommended power if you played things right. I think that's less the case now. And I think that'll be the case here where you need to be closer to the recommended power. So currently, the person with the strongest possible squad in the game is sitting at 37k. So that's right here, difficulty 3. So they either might be able to do difficulty 3 or do difficulty 4 with that particular squad. And that is going to be, I think probably it's either going to be 3 or 4. Nobody's doing 5 at the moment, I don't think. How close you are to the recommended power to do well in a particular difficulty is going to determine at what point is it worth putting more resources into the current team you have versus putting resources into a completely new raid team, right? How far off you can be in recommended power is going to determine that line. So we can't really know that until the raid comes out. But my guess is, like, I'm going to say that essentially if you have a team coming in on 30K, closing in on 30K, the amount of resources that you need to put into them to continue to increase that to that recommended power are a lot more than, you know, getting a low team to difficulty 2 or getting just a team onto difficulty 1 and giving yourself more teams, right? Just because the amount of resources required for power scales quite dramatically once you get, you know, very close to the essentially end game, right? I think one of the biggest limiting factors here is actually not going to be gold eventually. I think it's going to turn into character XP. And it's basically going to be, that's going to be the big limit on whether you can get a whole new team up and running. I think probably one of the better strategies is going to be, okay, I've got my raid teams, but this raid team would do a little bit better if I had this character with this synergy with these characters. And so you're going to target on getting individuals rather than a whole team to kind of come up. Obviously, if you don't have 5 current teams, then you're going to want to maybe target 2 or 3 different characters and start to form sort of like a base of a team. I think that's going to be the strategy moving forward. And I think character XP is going to be a big bottleneck, and gold will become less of a bottleneck. Okay, so now I kind of want to do some back of the envelope calculations for my accounts and where I think I'm going to be able to try and score point-wise. Again, this is all very rough because we don't actually know what the raids are going to be like. This is my main account, and this is my free-to-play account. And so for my main account, I am got about 5 teams that I think I can use for raids and that I'm going to be targeting for raids. So I've got a full Rivendell squad, an Isengard that includes Ajak plus Ironhide. We got Rohan 3 plus Strider plus the Halbachad. And then this squad actually turns out to be more powerful than some of my other squads. I didn't realize, but it's Bolg, Tordok, plus Brute, plus Legolas and Gimli. And actually, Brute, Legolas, and Gimli are pretty geared in my account, and Bolg is actually pretty up there too. It's actually Tordok that's sort of lacking here. And then my last one, which I'm going to be working on getting more up, is Fili, Kili, Naramiri, Pippin, and in this case, Miri. And I will probably eventually drop Miri, add Fro, and do like the Legolas, Gimli, Fili, Kili, and Fro squad, and then do something like a Naramiri, Pippin, Brute, Bolg, and Tordok squad. But for now, this is what I have. And then here, I've kind of listed their powers and whether, like, what difficulty I think I'm going to be able to get. So this is difficulty 3, and the max for difficulty 3 is 900,000 points. Half that is about 450,000 points. I want to shoot, like, at a difficulty, I want to shoot for more than half of the points at a particular difficulty. So that puts me in somewhere, if I use all 5 of these teams, between, 1 million and 2.5 million. So I think if I really try hard, I think I can get to that 2 million mark. For my free-to-play account, which really only has 3 teams, and even then the last team is like, I don't know about that. We have Rohan 3 plus Strider plus Halbarad, same as this one up here, and then the Isengard 3 plus Grimlers, which I regret, and then Ironhide. And I'm working on getting Morja and Ajak, but I don't have them up at all at the moment. And then I think the next raid team I'm going to work on here is getting my, essentially, an elf mix. So I have Naramiri I can use, and then I want to use a lot of the marquee characters. So Legolas, we'll use Legolas lead, we'll use Naramiri, we'll use Arwen, we'll use Eladin, and we'll use Elrahir. And I actually think this could be a decently strong squad on pace with these squads as well. And so for my free-to-play account, I'm looking at probably like 350k to 700k. This account just hit level 53, so I'm not super worried about it, but within a month or 2, I want to be able to be hitting, closer to this 2 mil number. So these are back of the envelope sort of calculations on what I think I might be able to get with in terms of possible personal reward track points. And so we can look at, let me get this one into view here. Okay. We can look at this graph here. So on the left here is my main account, and on the right here is my free-to-play account. And the top here, this like top of this little hash mark thing of, it's called a wick, I guess, is the max amount of gold I could get if I got max points. This is the lowest amount of gold I could get if I got the lowest amount of points that I've set myself basically up for having. And then here is the average plus 1 standard deviation. And so you can see that I'm probably going to get somewhere around 160, 170k on my main account. And down here in my free-to-play account, I'm probably going to get somewhere around, I don't know, 60 to 75k, I would say maybe. I'm putting it in a plot like this because I want to show the difference between a free-to-play account and a paying like an orca account, a whale account, essentially. So I'm going to not be quite doubling, but this is basically that gap between free-to-play and pay-to-play. And it comes in the form of probably somewhere between 70 to 100k in gold. You can do the same thing for character XP. I have so many graphs to show you. It's ridiculous. It reminds me of that it's the Nickelback song. Look at this graph. I can't sing for shit. Anyway, okay. XP, it's less of a gap, but you can see it follows the same sort of trend. About 40k XP, character XP for my main account, and about 20 to 25k XP for my free-to-play account. So less of a gap here in terms of total number, but it looks very similar, probably just because of the scaling of the graphs, the auto-scaling. But that is kind of what you're looking at in terms of how much a pay-to-play account is going to be able to pull away from a free-to-play account just from doing personal reward track stuff. Yeah, so this does not include any of the guild rewards. This is just the personal reward stuff. If we look at how many gold raid coins you're going to be able to get, this is my main account and this is my free-to-play account. Basically, you're going to be able to get like 100, 110 on my main account and then 40 on the free-to-play account. So if we switch back the supply store and we go down to raid supplies here, so about 100, you get 50 gold raid coins from the first, just even from that first raid box. So it's about 150 for my main account and what is that? 90 for my free-to-play account. So if we look at what we can buy with these gold raid coins, it's basically light and shadow crystals. And then you start to get into these are the uniques that you need for like gear 9 pieces. So these blue uniques, you could buy them also in here for like a bunch of arena currency, or you can, I guess, now buy them here in the raid supply store with raid currency. So my guess is that higher end players, so like on my main account, I probably won't be buying these because I farm like crystals every day and I don't need to buy them. But for my free-to-play account, that's like an extra 9 crystals I can get a week to help with any sort of that. And so I can actually use this as another source of crystal income. And that way I can spend all of my energy on doing something I think is actually a lot more useful, which is farming character shards. So I can basically rely on challenges and this to give me my crystals to get my characters up. And then I can spend my energy more usefully. But for my main account, I think I'm going to probably end up start saving for these uniques. Do they have the flowers? Right. So all of the elves require these yellow blossoms. And so I will probably be saving to buy these yellow blossoms because the elf squad is the first squad I want to take up to gear 9 when I'm able to. And so I'm gonna focus on doing that. The Mithril raid coins are kind of their own thing, right? Like you don't really get them until much later on. And you don't get very many. You don't get them till much later on, both in your personal track and in the guild reward box. And I think that's really upset a lot of people because they see, oh, Gandalf shards, Mithril raid coins. Oh, the only way you can get essences for gear 9, Mithril raid coins. Oh, and by the way, the only way to get epic ability materials, they finally added a way to get into the game, is through 200 Mithril raid coins, which is crazy. That's actually why taking Marquise to 5 stars is worth it, in my opinion now, because you just get 10 ability materials, right? But I think this is kind of the logic. This is what makes sense to me. We've got all 4 chapters of the raid released. You're getting like 40 Gandalf shards from a guild chest. You should be getting about 24 from your personal rewards. So that's what, 64 every week? Then you start getting these Mithril raid coins. This is basically going to help you finish off Gandalf, get him to 7 stars quickly. And then you're going to use all of your Mithril raid coins getting these essences down here so that you can get people to G9. So I think that's kind of the flow that they were aiming for. And that makes sense to me in terms of like, by the time you get enough Mithril kind of coins, you should be able to start finishing off Gandalf and kind of speed farming him with these and then go down and get the essences. The bulk of your Gandalf shards are not going to come from this store. It's going to come from your guild boxes and your personal rewards for each chapter, once all the chapters are released. So the last thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to wrap this up, I know it's been a long video, is how often we should be expecting these rewards. I'm still a little bit disappointed that they didn't give us either a prorated entry fee into the first chapter, or they just didn't give us some number of keys to start the raid right off the bat. I understand why, in theory, why they did it, because they're worried about operations and all that sort of thing, but I think that would have been a really nice thing to have. So what I have here in this column is number of members in a guild contributing 9 keys a day, and then basically the number of days it would take with that person doing that to launch the raid. So 220 days if you are a one-person guild. Not great. But let's go down to the bottom portion here. Let me move this a little bit. And you'll notice that at 36 members contributing every day, it's 6.17 days. What that means is that, at least for this first one, right, you're going to need to wait till day 7, till things kind of roll over, and then you can get enough keys to start it that day. So if we look, because you have to round these up, if you look at when this crosses from 6 to 7, it's at 32 members here, and this is key. Basically, you could have 32 members and still be on track to be doing the raid every 7 days, just like if you had 36 members. This means that you have actually a decent amount of wiggle room for people not contributing everything all the time, every day, right? I think that they're actively working on putting in raid key trackers, so you can make sure that people are kind of carrying their weight and doing that in your guild. But for the moment, you do have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of being able to start the raid on time every week and not having to worry about that too much. So with that, I know this is a long video. I'm gonna try and put the timestamps down below, and appreciate all the support I've gotten, and thank you all for watching.